Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back from lunch with Iowa Ideas. As I've mentioned before, this is our 9th year of Iowa Ideas, an event that explores issues and topics important to Iowa, both the opportunities and the challenges. And we're partway through day one of the 55 panels that we host over the day and a half. I'd again like to extend a special thank you to ITC Midwest as the presenting sponsor for this. And thank you to all of our sponsors for helping make this program free and accessible to the public. And I'd also like to thank the more than 200 panelists that we have over the day and a half that are taking time to share views from their world. That's a crucial part of the conversation. If you have questions during this conversation, you'll be able to submit them to the panel using the Q&A box at the bottom of the chat. And I will work those into the conversation as we go. So if there are questions, please don't hesitate to send them our way. A little bit about the theme that we're here to talk about is working through choppy waters in the current era, and how arts and culture organizations are managing the times, and also what can be done in terms of moving forward and succeeding. And museums and cultural institutions, from the Smithsonian to the Kennedy Center, nationally have been seeing increased political pressures, and we're going to talk a little bit about how that's trickled down into Iowa, and how organizations are taking smart risks, and what that means within the organizations. And so joining me is Jackie Hunter from the African American Museum of Iowa, and Kurt Strand from the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium up in Dubuque. And we may have a third panelist join us in a couple minutes. But Jackie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the African American Museum and the space that you're in today, and what the organization is doing?
Yes, thank you. So we are the African American Museum of Iowa is a 30-plus year institution. We've been in our spot now for a little over 20 years. We had a major renovation project that happened a little over 2 years ago. So we reopened in May of 2024 after being closed for 18 months. We are excited. There are great things that are happening here at the museum. My leadership is 6 months old here at the museum. Although I've been here a year, I was in a different role. And as we meet some of these challenges, we are just excited for the work that we are doing. We have a new exhibit coming out. Our History Makers Gala is this evening. And we're just pushing through and just hoping for good things, not only for our institution, but institutions across our state and certainly our nation that does the work, or do the work that we do.
All right, Kurt.
Yes, hello everyone. So I am Kurt Strand. I'm the president and CEO of the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium. We have been in Dubuque for a long, long time. Originally started through the Dubuque County Historical Society as a history museum, and evolved into a riverboat museum in the port of Dubuque. And at that time, we'd see about 20 to 30,000 visitors a year. The community and the board felt we were missing an opportunity by not interpreting the Mississippi River. So over the course of a few years, they built the plan and the idea to become the Mississippi River Museum. And as we started talking to guests or potential people in the community, they kept saying, we really want to also learn what's in the Mississippi River, which means we had to become a museum and aquarium, which is different from most of the institutions out there. And over the course of a few years, we built a building to focus on the Mississippi River watershed. And then we continued to grow and expand. And the Diamond Joe Casino gifted us the old casino building, which allowed us to create the National River Center. So now we're a 14-acre campus, seeing about 200,000 visitors a year. We are very unique. We are one of 15 institutions that are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and the American Alliance of Museums. And then we're also a Smithsonian affiliate. So we play this really interesting role in the community of work-life balance, a world-class organization that people in town can have reasons to learn a lot about conservation history, science, and we generate about $16 million of economic impact annually in the greater Dubuque area. So it's a really fun place to be, and I have been here for a little over 8 years.
All right. Well, and joining us is Dr. Cecilia Rakusik with the National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library. And we are just doing introductions. And so if you want to share a little bit about your organization and yourself, that's where we're at.
Thanks so much, Zach, and hello to my dear colleagues. I'm with the National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library, and like Kurt, we are also accredited by the American Alliance of Museums, and we are Smithsonian affiliates. So we are two of the major Smithsonian affiliates in the region, and we're very proud of that. The museum is 51 years old this year. It was established in 1974 by a group of visionaries who said, hey, you know, Iowa was a melting pot of culture. And in the late 1800s, Iowa spent over $20,000, which was a lot of money then, in Central Europe to advertise for immigrants to come to the region. And in 1914, over 40% of the population of Cedar Rapids was Czech. So we have a legacy here, and we say that we tell the American story, the Czech story, and the Slovak story, being the only national museum proclaimed by Congress in 1993. And so we're very proud of the fact that we are representing both cultures, and we want people to come here. And we have about, if we take our virtual and our all of our outgoing kinds of programming we do, we impact over 200,000 people a year and have about 40,000 visitors. But what's interesting is we want people to learn about their culture through our culture. So it doesn't matter if you're Norwegian or German or whatever culture, we want you to tell about your culture and learn from us and how we're more similar than different.
All right. Well, thank you. And I wanted to start with kind of a level setting question, I guess. And since the title of the segment is Charting the Course in Choppy Waters for Arts and Culture, I wanted to kind of ask and to stay true to the expression, what has been the positives and some of the challenges in the current 2025 for your organizations? Where's the water choppy and where is it maybe smooth? And I apologize, that'll be the only pun over the course of the hour that I use. And Dr. Rakusik, we can start with you.
Sure. Well, I think where it's been choppy is that certainly, you know, with a tight economy, we all have to look at budgets and we all have to look at making sure that we're here for our communities and for the publics that we serve. And we really depend upon the communities around us. And as a national museum, our national members to help us to get over what might be some choppy water. But I think overall, at least from my perspective, with our mission, we have not had too many choppy waters. It's just the unknown. But I think overall, the good thing is that people see the value of museums and libraries, and they see the value both physically and mentally, how important it is for all ages. So I think, and for all people. So I think the good that's come out of it is it's really highlighted the importance of what museums and what cultural institutions can do for a community and for the people of all ages that we serve.
Okay. Jackie.
The smooth we'll go with first is that we are continuing to do the work that we've always done. Our mission is to preserve, exhibit, and teach African American history, and we will continue to do that. We have not shied away from our mission, not shied away from our messaging. By default, the work that we do has come under criticism across the country. We are not an exception to that. We have seen certainly a reduction in attendance, where more so when we're looking at groups, we have seen a reduction in support from corporate supporters who have always been there with us and for us. So it is some unknown territory. Every day is something different. You know, we stay inspired. A lot of our focus right now really is on, you know, building our membership and having individual support. I think we very much relied on those corporate dollars, and now that they've been withdrawn, we've had to pivot a little bit, but we stay encouraged, and you know, we hope that we can continue to get the message out here that what we do is important and relevant and necessary, and that we will continue to build, you know, some individual and hopefully even some collective support where those dollars have been reduced by corporates.
Okay. Kurt.
So I think a lot of things that you can think about museums and the environment we're facing at this stage. The information I receive on organizations similar to us is that they're down 5 to 15% in visitors over the year. Some of that could be pressures on museums and comments about different types of things that are going on. Fortunately, we are not down. We're not up as much as we thought we'd be. We just opened up a brand new exhibit and have had a lot of people coming here, but not to the extent to replace the federal funding that was terminated and cut out. And philanthropically cannot replace those dollars coming to us. So when things are uncertain, when you're not sure about the impact of the economy or tariffs or interest rates or these other kinds of things, people hesitate. They either hesitate to take trips, they hesitate to donate, they hesitate to do other types of things. So I think there's turmoil out there that we can come out of in a really positive way. But I was in a leadership meeting earlier today and I said, I just can't predict it. And I've never really tried to predict because it's really hard to predict all these kinds of things. But I feel like what I've heard is that there's more uncertainty out there. There is consumer confidence today, but not 6 months down the line because they're not sure what's happening. All these things to me cause people to be a little more careful with where they donate, with where they visit, and what they're thinking. So as a team, then we have to replace some of the different types of fundings that we need. More importantly, we're blessed to be in a community that loves us and supports us. We have a lot of local favor coming here, et cetera. But some of the foundation dollars that we've relied on in the past are moving to health and food. And some of the other organizations are pulling back a little bit. So I think the choppy waters line is where we are right now. Sometimes it's fun to be in choppy waters. Sometimes it's not.
Well said. I know that, there are times where, it feels invigorating and maybe a three-dimensional chess game. There are other times where, you're seasick and probably wondering, should I be in a canoe on the Mississippi? And so I wanted to maybe start with a little bit of, at the beginning of the year, we saw cutbacks to grants and in a variety of ways. And I was curious, Jackie, you mentioned corporate support as well. And so I'm curious, have things stabilized? What did those reductions in some of those grants mean to the organization? They hit pretty early in a fiscal year. Have you been able to recover from that?
No, and sure, we have not recovered. And it is creating concern. We rely on many of those dollars for operating expenses, and there's a deficit that we are forced to reckon with. We start looking at our budget again this month, and we have some concerns if that will. We really have cut back in many of the places that we can. We have positions that we have not been able to, or we won't be able to fill. We're looking at some of the benefits that we've had that are certainly going to be reduced as a result. And we are definitely in uncharted waters here at the museum right now. And so it is a call to action for us at the museum right now in terms of what it looks like moving forward. Unlike some of the other cultural institutions, even with here in Cedar Rapids, we don't have big dollar sponsors. We don't have big dollar donors. We really do, again, rely on the support that for many years we've received from corporations, but because their hands are tied in many ways, those dollars are just not there. And so there's rarely a week that passes here where we're not having to have some really intentional conversation about what this is going to look like for this museum moving forward, probably in a way that they haven't had to do in 30 years.
Kurt, how about for you?
We have a similar story. The federal dollars that have come into us, we had a IMLS grant terminated, but luckily we'd spent most of those dollars. And those were for a master interpretive plan that really will be our messaging, cohesive messaging goal going forward for the next 20 years. We did apply for some other grants. There was a FEMA grant we had applied for Homeland Security and Safety, and a couple other grants. One is a follow-up to our interpretive master plan, and IMLS and NEH funding was just basically cut. So that has caused us to have to figure out how do you shift resources What are the important things you're working on? We have held a couple of positions open. We're not filling those. We're under some cost constraints. We're just really managing our expenses at this stage. Again, we're getting a lot of visitors come through, and they sure like to buy plushes of animals, et cetera. But more importantly for us is looking out 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, and cash flow and all those types of things for us. So it's not the easiest period of time for us. We have a great organization. The team has really banded together in many ways. I notice a lot of people chipping in, perhaps where they might not have in the past. But again, it's that kind of turmoil that's hitting us at this point, trying to figure out what are we going to do over the next 3 months and then over the next 18 months to get through this next period. I do believe we probably will have to decide not to rely on federal funding going forward. And if we do get it, that will be a bonus for us, but trying to figure out how do you survive with philanthropy, with different types of grants, with foundations, et cetera. So it's kind of changing our makeup. There's a lot of research that shows the percent of typical museums funding that comes from interest from their endowments, government, earned revenue, et cetera. And that, in my opinion, is shifting, maybe dramatically.
Dr. Rakusek?
Well, I think I concur with my colleagues. We were faced with three big challenges. Number one, we had a very nice humanities grant that was received on a Tuesday and on a Friday was cut. And that was a major grant for our programming because we do bring in monthly 2 to 3 entertainers and people from abroad, as well as people that have Czech and Slovak descent to entertain for our community and to bring a lot of programming. So that was a big blow. The other thing is we were looking at having less reliance on our endowment interest. And in fact, we're having to have more reliance now on our interest on our endowment, something that we were hoping to build up more. So that's been critical. And I think the third thing has been the contributions are pretty consistent, but we did see a little fall for our two major events, our Brunost and our Gala, where the sponsorships were good, but they weren't as high as they were the previous year. So I think you're seeing it's a pattern. And I think the fear that we have right now, I think the two words I use here most are planning and planning for the unknown. In other words, because we're really not sure what it's going to look like, and we do have to plan, and so that means probably not filling unfilled positions that we have open, not filling them, or it means more reliance on virtual, especially. We're looking to do more virtual outreach as well because we can reach a larger audience there and maybe cut our costs a little bit. So it definitely has affected us in 3 areas, and it's all about planning now for an unknown future. And hopefully the good of it, of the work that we all collectively do, will be seen as important.
When you talk about the reductions of grants or the federal funding, how do you go about replacing those holes? Those aren't necessarily, that's not a quick process. And, if you're going to look at events, then you're going to probably need more bodies to pull off events, or you need a runway of time to pull off events. But do you look to philanthropic sources? Do you look to, if you change admission costs, maybe you're fighting against yourself in terms of drawing more people in. How do you approach, that long-term, hey, how do we, change the funding makeup?
So I think it's going to be a delay on certain things that you just can't do. There are more people chasing the fewer foundations and the fewer dollars out there, and all are good causes and all are really a benefit to it. So if we were going to plan on redoing an exhibit in 2026 early, we may be moving that out to 2027 or 28. Wait until we really have secured funding in place. But there's decisions you make on what are our priorities, and some of the priorities will slide timing wise, hopefully not just disappear, but perhaps it's nothing that we can do in the short run. We have to move it to mid or longer down the line. Now, saying that, there are also things that need to be repaired. You could have an HVAC system or other things like that. So you have other things that can hit you that are going to take some of those dollars that you were counting on for different areas as an organization.
And I would just, what Kurt is saying with what I call deferred maintenance, that's a big issue with, I think, most of our institutions. Not so much probably the African American, because you just have a newly renovated great museum, but we that are 25 or more years older in a building, the HVAC systems, the roof, and all of those things, and how long can the deferred maintenance be called deferred maintenance, and at what point do we really have to start using resources for that versus programming? And when you ask that, Zach, about the grants, I think it does two things. We have to postpone some of our big ticketed items for entertainment and programming, and we have to look at really trying to get sponsorships from other places, but those are highly competitive now. And so and for us, we have another challenge that hasn't been brought up, is that we bring in a lot of international entertainers, and there's something called an artist visa, which is now a requirement and has been a requirement, but it's really very enforced now. And so that means any entertainer that comes to us, we cannot pay unless they have an artist visa, which is very expensive. And so that means that we're having to look at different types of entertainment and not charging the public for that, so that we have to raise money to support it. So these are all unique challenges that are facing us now.
So you're unable to charge the public because of
Correct. So if you're an artist and you come, say, from Prague, and you do not have an artist visa, we cannot pay you, and we cannot charge.
Okay, that's creates a unique dynamic there.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to also talk about the philanthropic side, and that could look a couple different ways. You have the obviously you have grants and foundations, and that's been talked about a little bit already about the challenges there, but also you have donors, and the challenge of how much can you expect them to step up? How do you balance that when you're in a kind of this unfamiliar space with? Is it realistic to expect them to philanthropy to go up? Or, is that another one of those things where, okay, we're going to have to figure out another way, because that's always tends to be the same. How do you approach that?
Kurt made reference to it earlier when he was speaking about, we are all part of communities. We see how our communities are suffering. And there is that mixture of feeling for me. Are you giving me the money, or are you making sure that a family is going to eat? Are you making sure that a family is housed? And so we are going, to those who have supported us in the past, but we also know that some of those dollars are being rerouted to other needs in our community. And typically people see that what we do is more of a luxury. Those who, even for those who would typically come to the door, for those that we would normally serve, we're having to decide what that looks like. And so that is why for us at the museum, although, and Kurt also has said it as well, bringing more bodies in, who are paying to come in is not going to do it alone. We really have to look at those who have a genuine interest in what we do, who are willing to come in and help offset some of that loss. And we're still trying to figure out what, again, that looks like.
Kurt, Dr. Rakusik, any thoughts on that?
I think the interesting thing for me is that when you live in a giving community with a lot of really great different types of nonprofits, that their giving can go up, but it's also needed in many more places. And there are people that have a passion for certain types of museums or other organizations. There are people who have a passion just to help the community and spread it around, et cetera. And I just don't think there's enough dollars out there to replace what has been lost from federal funding, some of the foundations that have redirected their giving, et cetera. And all of them have great intentions, but there are also limits on what they can do.
And I think making our institutions accessible to all people. For example, we now have first Saturdays of the month are always free for students, to make it so that all people can come in, and that's certainly not going to generate money, but hopefully in some way you can inspire people who maybe can't give a lot but can give to help sponsor that Saturday that's free for students. So you look at ways of, we have a great board, for example. We have 37 people on our board. And I keep saying to them that it's important that you maybe give, but it's also important that you find people who can give no matter what amount, so that they become true ambassadors and actually even fundraisers for us to help us find leads. And that might be in some small way, but that's important too, that we inspire others who may say, I can only give $25 or I can only give $5 a month. That's okay. And to have that inspiration that no matter what you do, and to know that we're there to help. We have an immigration ceremony every year here for naturalization of Iowa American citizens. And we got 45 new members, and none of them are Czech or Slovak, and we gave them memberships. And that's a great way to bring people in to say, come to a museum. So we ourselves have to look at creative ways that we can bring our community in, and hopefully that will help us to grow and get new funding.
You mentioned a 37-member board, which has to be one of the larger boards. But I am curious, does this change about some of the challenges that you're facing? Has this changed how you think about the boards, and what have you had to do to kind of? Are you thinking about having different skill sets on the board? Do you think about do they have awareness of, hey, suddenly you may need to be asked, or you may need to do something that you haven't been asked to do yet? How are you addressing that?
That's a great question. We had a consultant here a few years ago that thought, because we're national and international and local, that we should have up to a 50-member board, because that allows you to have your tentacles, because we have everywhere. And I think what's happened is, number one, we've really engaged in more board training. We had a 2-day-long board training last year, and this year we try at each board meeting, we meet 4 times physically per year. We try to inspire them, which is nothing new, to be ambassadors, but to really recruit and to be the face of the museum and library, and to constantly look at finding volunteers, to finding donations, to finding contributions, to finding skill sets. And your question, Zach, is right on. We're doing right now a board matrix to look at the skill sets of our individual board members. What do we need, and how do we need to start getting and recruiting board members that will fill, for example, when our wonderful treasurer retires, who is going to take that place? So some sort of what we would call planning for the future. So I think what it's really caused us to do is to look, how we have 5 attorneys on our board. And so is that too many? And should we have, so to look at our makeup. So we are doing that now. So that's really caused us to look at our board.
We did a similar thing. We did a gap analysis of our board. We changed our board governance organization to be more proactive, created some new documents, some new board education plans, et cetera. And then a skills gap analysis of where would we benefit as an organization for people on the board who offered different types of knowledge that we may have. We also then created an advisory board, a younger group that are up and comers in the community. We're up to 9, I believe, right now. And they're very active. They love to give their opinions and bring friends and attend a lot of different events. And it's changed the energy dynamic between my staff and our board and our advisory board now. I feel like we really have a lot of things going there. I've been on a number of boards in my previous positions, and I always kind of thought the boards were picked to be able to donate. And my attitude is they're picked to help you become a better organization. And some are really capable of donating, and some bring other kinds of talents to us. But I'm very pleased with the progress over the last 2 years in just how we've looked at the mixture and the diversity of our board.
We have a question from the audience, and it says, I'd be curious to hear about recruitment strategies for board members. It seems like everybody is so busy these days that people don't have time to serve. How are you getting them?
Well, we're doing it by asking board members to. We have a governance and nominating committee, and the governance committee is responsible for taking these nominations in, and we do it, based on how many openings we have. And we already started for next year the nomination process. I think we have 3 openings. We already have 6 nominees, and the nominees all come from within the board or from someone calling and saying, hey, I'm interested. And believe it or not, people will call and say, I'm really interested in serving on your board. So it comes from a variety, but I would say mostly from internal people that know people that are interested and or have identified people that might be, like we have a board member from California that was nominated by a Czech consul general that knew this person might be interested. So it's a variety of ways. And we try to get it now at least 6 to 9 months before the actual election. So we'll have a roster of board members, not last minute.
Our process is very much like Cecilia's in that when I came on, we already had the board. They had suspended anyone new coming on as I was transitioning into this role at the end of last year. So now we are right back at the recruiting. Everything at this point is coming from within the board. We have most of our members are across the state because we are the museum for the state. But we also do have 2 board members who are not in Iowa. They are former Iowans, and they provide support as well for where they are.
And I've done similar things, but the other thing that I do often is I attend a lot of events in Dubuque and I watch people. My most recent board member that joined us a month ago, I met him. He was actually on campus with his grandkids. And so I caught him and talked to him and asked about joining our board. And then we met for an hour and a half. And his last question was, why me? Why did you select me? And I said, well, I've seen you in this situation. I've seen you here. I noticed that you're very active in the community. He also has a really deep interest in conservation, which was one of our gaps. So I got to say to him, not only are we building a new conservation program and mowing the monarchs and pollinators, et cetera, which are kind of right up his alley, but he also has expertise that helps a ton. So it's not unlike looking at talent when you're running an organization and you see people or competitors who do great things and you start to get to know them. My eyes are always open and I'm always paying attention to who stands out.
I wanted to ask too, you've all mentioned kind of leaving positions unfilled. And this is along those lines, the challenge is when times are tougher, that groups kind of retract and, you have to cut back on the number of things that you're doing. Are you seeing ways that maybe groups are forming alliances or working across to navigate the landscape that we're in? How are you, what are you seeing in terms of collaborations that maybe allow you to work across organizations rather than necessarily isolate and shrink?
One thing I've noticed on my team,
Go ahead.
Many more cross-functional sort of meetings. Development's meeting with collections or others, and they're talking about, number one, the challenges and how to band together, but then what's the messaging? Especially with our social media, we have a lot of people following us on like 40,000 or 44,000 Facebook people, and that we can't do that with just the marketing team. So there's more of these groups getting together, taking on challenges. But it's not always easy when you're not able to fill a couple of key positions for you. So somebody has to figure out how to step up and lend a hand.
We're a small team. We do everything together. When we were unable to fill 2 of our positions, we kind of understood. I'm coming from the educator role, and so I do a lot with our present education manager, in part because I do like the work. But typically, last year when I was here, if there was a large group, I'd be by myself and I'd have to kind of figure that out. Whereas now Josh and I are able to work together. I'm able to help him kind of fill those gaps so that we can provide a much more intensive product than we would have been able to do, again, me doing it alone last year. We rely on our volunteers quite a bit. We have begun to recruit much more. We are even looking at those talents as we talk about our board. We look at the talents of our volunteers to see, how can they offer more than just being at the front desk. And so that has helped us as well. We have one of our volunteers right now is helping our curator. We have another volunteer that is helping with our grand opening events that are coming up. So we really are beginning to look outside of even us to try to fill those gaps.
Yeah, volunteers are so important. But the other aspect is that we're student interns. We're doing a lot with student interns from both Iowa, the United States, and abroad. And that's really been helping the staff as much as they can to do the work.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit here. We've seen some pressure about the content, or there's been pressure, and I think we've seen this at the Smithsonian. We've seen this in other groups, to change a narrative or the presentation of information. And I was curious whether any of that concerned, Kurt and Dr. Kusick, you've said your Smithsonian affiliates. Have you felt any of that pressure? But then also, I think, there have been phrases like it was Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico. And how do you address things like that? And the second part of the question will be the work that goes into exhibits and the preparation to make sure that multiple voices are there. But I was curious in terms of what you're feeling and how you're addressing that.
Well, I'll address Gulf of America and other types of comments like this. So we intentionally call ourselves a fact-based organization. People can have their own beliefs, they can't have their own facts. The fact of the matter is this body of water is called the Gulf of Mexico and now the Gulf of America. The federal government didn't request that we chip out the name of it on the aquarium and change it. They did request for us to use it. So we use it in our education programs. We use both. And we also use it we changed our maps. It's not unlike the Gulf of California or the Sea of Cortez, two names for the same type of body of water. We also decided as an organization to take a stand on fact-based science topics, conservation topics, etc. And then also to be Switzerland and most other things, because we want people, whoever they are, whatever they believe, whatever they're bringing in the door, whatever accessibility issues they may have, to come to our organization and feel welcomed, to have a chance at the same experience, to learn the same types of things. So if we're going to talk about a theory and science, we're probably going to be firmer in that than if we're going to talk about, or a fact in science perhaps, than something else. But I'm proud of the organization, the way that we try to be as welcoming as possible for everybody to come here. And when, in fact, the Gulf of America, the first time I said that phrase, the group I was talking to laughed. And I explained to them that we have visitors from over 75 countries, so we're going to use both because that's our position as an organization.
And we, in our mission as well as our vision statement, are very focused on that we are a museum for all people, and that we focus on immigration, freedom, and democracy, and the search for that through immigration, legal immigration, and then the presence of democracy and freedom. And so we, much like Kurt is saying, we stand very firm. We have an outstanding curatorial staff and libraries team that focus on fact-based presentations. And as far as the Smithsonian, they've been with the affiliates, because I think it's important to note that neither Kurt nor our museum, we don't get money from the Smithsonian. We're affiliated because of our excellence, but I think sometimes people think that, we get money from them. We do not. But I think it's just a recognition of who we are. But they've been very good about upholding the standards of, factual basis, and also the fact that we're an educational institution. So we need to present to our people that visit us the current information that is accurate and is educational.
And we are no different. We are a fact-based institution. We have been. We continue to tell the story. We know there are difficult conversations that happen in this space, but we are here to provide that lens, to provide that engagement in that conversation. We do a lot of hard work around here to make sure that we get the truth out, to get the information out. And we, I think, really do see our guests as those who care about our mission and are coming in to learn, and hopefully walking away with at least a nugget that makes them want to go back and learn and read and understand more. And we take that role extremely. We're very serious in how we approach that and what we try to offer our guests.
I wanted to ask if there were levers or if there are any, kind of policy changes that maybe could be helpful, in the current landscape that we're in, or things that maybe the general public should be aware of, that when they're making decisions of maybe whether to visit, are there things that they can do to help the current landscape?
Search for real knowledge, and the fact that there are two sides to every story, but the fact is that museums are a hub of providing knowledge, and then people can learn from that knowledge. And then we have the freedom to decide what we want, but the museum is there to provide for us the knowledge base. And then individuals who visit can make their decisions. But I think all three of our institutions, I certainly am not speaking for them, but we are really key educational institutions to provide knowledge to people of all ages, and then they can make their decisions.
When we came out of COVID, I noticed when we reopened, Governor Reynolds had closed zoos and aquariums for 10 weeks or so, that we had guests coming more often, and they said, we're coming because we know you need us to come. And I would see them buying extra things in the store, and somebody walking out with 2 bags, and I would say, thank you. And they said, well, we know you need it. And I think the one thing that could happen is people realize that many of these organizations need them. So come and see a museum, or go to the Blank Park Zoo, or do these other types of things that help organizations sustain during difficult times.
We saw that after the death of George Floyd, where we just were getting support that we had never seen before. Corporations are one thing, but it was just individuals who were coming in who wanted to do something to do their part. And we have to kind of keep that momentum going. I think that we are always looking for ways to, again, support, or we should be looking for ways to support institutions that are trying to do the good work. And again, keep that support coming. Let others know, bring a guest who hasn't come before to the museum. Share out with your networks the good work that is being done.
And I don't think we could overestimate enough what I said earlier on. As a former healthcare professional, museums are outstanding places for physical and mental health growth and wellness. They are really, and I don't think we emphasize, there's been a lot of research done on that, especially in Europe. But museums are outstanding places to increase our mental health, to improve our mental health and our physical fitness. So we need to stress that as well.
I was curious also, do you lean into some of having these conversations, or, as leaders of the organizations, do you try and avoid them? Some of the difficult, whether it's the political conversation, or do you tie it to history to have, hey, there's historical context to this? How do you approach some of that? Is it something where you want to have these conversations, or is it easier to back away?
We encourage it like that we absolutely encourage those difficult conversations. We realize that this is maybe one of the few places that it can happen. Every Saturday, first Saturdays for us, admission is $1. It starts off in the morning with coffee and conversations. I created that program when I first came on board for the purpose of being able to take what you were seeing in the museum, particularly our exhibit at the time, Racist Things, and walking in and knowing that there was a place for you to have that conversation. Sometimes the conversations are very focused on what's happening in the museum. Many times they're focused on what's happening in the community, and just wanting to be able to engage with others who are probably thinking what you're thinking.
We try to provide webinars and podcasts. We instigated that this past year. Every month we have webinars and podcasts, and we engage people in the Czech Republic and people in Slovakia, because our issues and our concerns and maybe even some of our challenges are very similar. And by having that international perspective, we've gotten into some great dialogue.
I'm curious, can you speak a little bit about, you have that international audience. How are they receiving some of the challenges or some of the conversations from their vantage point?
Well, it's very interesting. They usually have lots of questions like, how are things going? But they have their own issues, with the Ukrainian war, with Russia, and both Slovakia borders Ukraine. And so they have lots of questions related to that. So we even, get into some very good dialogue. And I think that both sides have questions, and both sides realize that there's a lot of respect across the ocean. And so I think it's been really good because it's been open conversation and a very dynamic.
Okay. I was curious also, obviously, have you had to have more of the conversation about the economic impact that your organizations have? Kurt, I noticed you mentioned it right in the opening statement. Here's what we do for the community each year. I'm curious, what led you to kind of open with that, and are you having to share that more often these days?
I think that people look at organizations like ours as entertainment, and they don't realize the impact. Prior to coming here, I worked for a very large company that had an office in Dubuque. And we struggled with getting people to move to Dubuque, to stay in Dubuque, to embrace Dubuque, to have reasons to not travel and go to Chicago or other places and raise their children and families here. And to me, it was, what can my team find about a community that they can embrace with passion and meet people and want to stay here? And so the River Museum, when I worked at this other company in the port, just right next door to where I am right now, we built a partnership with the River Museum for our staff and visitors, and we'd bring authors in, worked in publishing, and the authors we'd bring over to the River Museum. And I learned very quickly that there's an impact that organizations like ours have that people don't realize when they're here. Just like people here don't realize the Mississippi River is amazing. Everybody that comes to our organization on the paddle boats from Europe, Mississippi River's on their bucket list. Mm-hmm. So we now talk about saving species. We have gotten species off the endangered species list. We have done a variety of things like that for the greater good. The fact that we can have organizations come here to have a world-class experience without having to leave the community and build different reasons to stay here. And then, of course, bringing in a lot of heads and beds, over $16 million of impact back to the community is a really big thing. Part of the story that I think we want people to realize is we're more than just entertainment.
Kurt, I love what you said, because I've been here now 7 years. And the first time in 2018, when I spoke in Chicago, the first question that came up, why is the museum in Cedar Rapids, Iowa? And I didn't accept. Moving from Florida, I had no idea. I thought it's a perfect place to be, and it took me by surprise. Then I go to New York, and I'm speaking, why is the museum in Cedar Rapids, Iowa? Now I say, because that is the only and best place it should be. It's a destination place. And like Kurt is saying, we have the only astrological clock tower in the Western Hemisphere, and the only one in the world with a sundial. And these are things that, people come here. We had 158 people who came from Prague and said, this is better than Prague. But my point is that, like Dubuque, like Cedar Rapids, and we are the hubs of culture that people don't even realize. We are really, when we get visitors from Europe, we take them to the Mississippi, we take them to the African American, and they're so proud of what they see here. And that's the thing that I think challenges us most, if I can say, is that we in Iowa have this rich cultural and these institutions. And I go and they say, Ohio, no, Iowa. And so we really need, we're very rich in culture here, very rich.
And ours is always, I didn't know Black people lived in Iowa. So then we get the opportunity to really talk about many of the firsts that were happening here, and so many significant things. I live in Dubuque. I make the commute to Cedar Rapids. And so I know what both of those worlds have offered for me, have offered for my family. And like Kurt said, I think that we don't spend enough time sometimes telling. Let me go back. We can tell the message, but sometimes it does need to come from those who are frequent in that space. My very first time coming to Cedar Rapids was to come to the museum. And I said it in my interview, it was the first time and the first place that I came in and I felt like it was home. And that has stayed with me. And that is what made me come back over and over again. And it absolutely influenced why I applied for the role. And so it's much further and much bigger than just coming into the museum. It's just what my comrade said. It's about really coming in here and finding a place that not only can be home for you, but can certainly be an extension of that for others.
I wanted to ask also, just with some of the changes with education, field trips and kind of reaching that next generation, how do you feel that is going in terms of, are you still getting schools interested? Is that a space that is changing? How
we are losing field trips.
No, we're continuing. Ours are pretty consistent, 5,000 to 7,000 students a year. And if anything, we need more space because we have one classroom. But no, our student trips are pretty consistent. We do have to raise money for them, though, because sometimes there is a fee. And so we do raise money for them. But our student trips have gone up.
So I think the way we've evolved our field, I call them field experiences. Anybody can come and walk around, look at fish and history. We try to build our content to tie in with the curriculum, the next generation science standards, next generation social science standards. For example, we have 800 kids from Waterloo come. Our educators go to Waterloo to their elementary school 2 trips to talk about things that are in their curriculum before they come and visit us. We have another thing with the Dubuque Community Schools where the kids come with little clipboards and they look at a habitat or an exhibit and they figure out something they're interested in, then they research it and then they present back to their class. So there are ways for us to be more important, embedded into the classroom. Teachers will say, I'm too busy to do field trips, etc. And I'll say, you're too busy not to, because those cross-cutting themes and these really interesting applications are what give people that passion, that spark to decide they want to become an environmental scientist or a historian or those kinds of things. And our outreach has boomed, bringing our programs to anywhere within a 2 to 2.5 hour range from us. But our on-campus programs are going very strong. And in fact, this spring we ran out of enough educators to actually hold all the field trips we want. So any educator out there, call me.
Okay. It's fascinating to see kind of the, in some regards, the more that you can tie it to the curriculum, whether that's what can draw that connection and get them in the door eventually. But it sounds like if you're having to make 2 visits first, you're invested in a partnership almost that way.
Yeah, I think partnership's a great word for this.
We've developed a really nice partnership with Collins here in town, and we do a lot of STEM and STEAM education. And it's really great to see, the children and then their families. They bring their families even. So that's very nice.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask in the time that we have left, how are you approaching, have the changes of this past year required you to change maybe the 3 to 5 year plan? Are you expecting the funding and some of those other challenges? Is that a temporary period in time, or are you, as you're approaching some of these changes, is this kind of evolutionary to the organization, and we're going to just permanently change what we're doing? How are you approaching that?
I think it's both, actually, the way you phrase the question. Kind of looking out to as mentioned, 3 months to 18-month period where I believe relying on foundation and federal dollars is going to be difficult, which then means how do we maneuver our organization to still give an amazing guest experience and do all the things we need to do, but do them in a way that we can be financially sustainable. And then as we look out, you never say never because things change and you don't know who's going to be making decisions or things like that. But I'm not sure that the way that we have funded ourselves over the last few years will be the same. I think the buckets will be the same, but I think there's going to be more money in endowments because of this great wealth transfer that's happening today. And federal dollars are probably, in my opinion, could be reduced something. And there's a limit to what you can do with earned revenue. So I just think that mix might change a little bit. The more we can prepare ourselves for agility and flexibility, the better I think we would be.
I think planning is going to be key. We just are finishing this year our 5-year plan. We're not going to do another 5-year. We're going to do a 3-year plan simply because of all the unknowns. It's going to be a shorter time frame. And I think looking at those buckets, I call them the 6 buckets, where we get our primary revenue from, will probably change a bit. And as Kurt said, I think that locating and finding new donors for us is going to be key. Especially as we go into, ironically, a capital campaign. That's for us a big challenge because since 2015, they've been talking about a capital campaign. I think it's time we bite the bullet and do it because we need it. And so this is the worst time probably to start a capital campaign, but we have to do that. So that's going to be a major challenge for us.
So you hit it. I'm glad we did the capital campaign when we did. I don't think that would have happened any later than that. And we really are. A lot of it is looking at our donor base and just like Cecilia said, we are looking at a 3-year plan and we're almost having to do it within a 6 month. Every 6 months, what is this supposed to look like? How do we divert? Trying to forecast out as much as we can. But just, again, understanding that we are in unknown territory and what does this need to look like? I really have begun to lean very much on those of us who are doing this work just to see what it is that they are doing and how they are also navigating these waters at this time.
No, absolutely. And I know from another hat that I wear, that there are many organizations that when the federal funding stopped, they stopped. And so I think it's a tribute to each organization, to the strength. And I know that things may be challenging. It's extremely encouraging to see the strength of each of the organizations. And so thank you for that. I know that we've reached the end of our window of time this afternoon. And so I get to host another panel in 5 minutes, so I have to switch gears and then think about the future of energy use in Iowa. So I appreciate each of you for taking time with us today and for our audience as well. And so the next session will start right at 3:00. And so thank you to everybody for your time here today. And thank you to each of the panelists for sharing the information today. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, Zach, thanks to you too.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.